Hey guys, Tyler with Independence Overland. Today I'm going over a budget refrigerator. This is a SetPower RV60D 60-quart refrigerator freezer, and it's a dual zone. And they offered to send me one of these for free, so I took them up on it because honestly, I have been very interested in some of the more budget-friendly refrigerators because I've never owned one. I just went straight to something that's 3 times the expense of this, and so they offered to send me one, and so I took them up on it. I know not everybody's wanting to spend a ton on a refrigerator for their truck, but really this thing isn't much more expensive than like a Yeti cooler. This particular model is a 60 quart. It retails for $529 as of the making of this video. So it's the middle of winter, but I've also had this thing inside hooked up to 12 volts, and I've been doing some testing on this refrigerator. So I have a pretty good idea of what I'm up against with this thing. And so I'm gonna give you some of my opinions and some of my insight on this. So this is a dual zone 60 quart fridge. And they've done some interesting things on how they divide this. It's obviously a 12 volt refrigerator, just like everything else I've used. It's a single lid, but it's a dual zone, and it's kind of a neat design because it has a like plastic divider here, which I was skeptical about when I first got this, but it actually works pretty good. In my testing, I've been testing it in a shop because right now it's freezing outside, so it's hard to test the refrigerator and how well it cools. So it's been in a 65, roughly around 65 degrees consistently. So what I did was I plugged this in inside the shop, 65 degrees, and I set it for 35 degrees. And I also used it for a freezer for about a week. And this is pretty much what I found. I just wanted to see how long it took with full power supply, how long it would take to freeze water. I had 24 bottles of water inside of this refrigerator, and I was doing different tests with it plugged into AC power, plugged into the wall. The tests were to see how well it would freeze, and I've done that with some of my other refrigerators before where I'll use the freezer side to make ice. And so all I did is I put like 4 bottles of water in there, which this doesn't seem like much because you're used to your home refrigerator, but to freeze something like this does take a tremendous amount of power. Plugged into AC power, I didn't want it to have any power limitations, and I wasn't monitoring the power at all. I had the refrigerator divided freezer mode, refrigerator mode. I had the refrigerator set on 35 degrees. I had the freezer mode set on like 10 degrees. And just waiting for these to freeze did take multiple days. And what I did see was the temperature fluctuated quite a bit. So certain compressors on these types of refrigerators, some will be more efficient and some will just be a stronger compressor, but it'll use more battery power. This refrigerator falls on the side of efficiency. This is not the refrigerator I would recommend if you wanted to go out and make a bunch of ice because you're gonna be partying, you're gonna be making mixed drinks and stuff like that. It can make ice. Obviously, it's a lot to ask. Freezing this much water with a refrigerator this size, it is a lot. What I would recommend if you decide to get this refrigerator is to cool everything off ahead of time. Don't go to the grocery store, buy a bunch of warm waters and warm beers and stuff, put them in here and expect it to have ice and cold drinks by the time you get to camp 4 hours later even. Don't expect that. With this refrigerator, you'd probably be better off making ice at home, putting it in here, and it will keep it frozen for sure. But I wouldn't expect it to make ice overnight while you're sleeping or something like that. Maybe if there's smaller ice cubes, this is a lot to freeze, so keep that in mind. So I'll do some more tests here in the future. All of these waters right now are cold, so I can put those in there and I can drink one, my wife can drink one, put a couple more in there, and they will cool off at a really nice rate. But what I wouldn't expect would be take all these at room temperature or on a summer day, hot temperature out of the back of the truck and put it in here and expect it to be cold in the next couple hours. And I mean, that's a lot to ask out of any of these 12 volt refrigerators, but just keep in mind that this one is more efficient than some of the others that I've seen, but it's pretty slow at cooling things down. So on the topic of efficiency, last night I ran it in eco mode on this battery, and I was absolutely blown away today to come in and 24 hours later, the battery's still on, it's still going, and right now it's still at 12%. So I've used probably about 10 amp hours to keep this going 24 hours. So this is a very efficient fridge. Now this is an 11 amp hour, 11.6 amp hour battery. I wouldn't recommend a small battery like this for everyday use, just because I'm saying this lasted 24 hours. This is in a controlled environment. It was only a 30-degree difference, so it wasn't demanding that much power. So observing what just happened with this thing, if I kept this in eco mode and put it in the FJ with my 50 amp hour battery, this would last 5 days without any solar whatsoever. With solar panels on top of your truck and a lithium battery, you could for sure run this indefinitely. It would not turn off. This is a super efficient refrigerator, but the downside is that it's a little bit slower of a compressor. According to my external thermometer here, I had this sitting inside the refrigerator so I can monitor what this was saying and monitoring what the refrigerator was saying. Now, when this was plugged into the wall, I was finding that it was taking multiple days to get this thing down to the set temperature. I was filling it up with a bunch of room temperature water putting it in there and letting it cool down. It did take several days, and it reads 10 degrees off is what it seems to do. And then after a couple of days, it finally meets back to where it should be, which is like 35 degrees, which I would say is probably about average for what people are gonna be keeping their refrigerator at. So it did take several days to get to that point. Now, with everything I'm saying on it takes days to cool things down, that is an entire loaded refrigerator with warm food and water. Now, keep in mind, when you go to the grocery store, most of that stuff's already cold, so you can load it up and you can move on, and you're not gonna notice it. If you put a room temperature water in the middle of all these cold ones in the fridge, it's gonna cool it off that much faster. But so I don't think it's gonna be, every time you put something in here, it's not gonna take days. Just keep that in mind. So the refrigerator does have LEDs on the inside, which is really nice because honestly, I didn't expect that either. And then the dividing compartment is just this piece of plastic. And then it has a little basket for the freezer side. One thing about moving from a cooler to a refrigerator is that a lot of people tend to miss how cold a drink is whenever you pull it out of the ice water. One cool thing about the dual zone is you can have drinks on one side, set those at maybe 33 degrees, and then the rest of your food you keep at 38 degrees so it doesn't wilt your lettuce and stuff like that. So there is other advantages other than just freezing, so keep that in mind. Now this thing does have a fairly small footprint as far as its mounting dimensions goes, but it's a taller refrigerator compared to some of my other ones. But it's a simple layout. All you have is a power button. You have a max mode and an eco mode, and then you have your up and down, your higher temperature, lower temperature, and on-off button. It's a really simple setup. It comes with one cable. This cable plugs into an adapter that they send that's a 120, 110 volt adapter. So there's no real bells and whistles with this refrigerator. There's no cover, there's no remote, there's nothing like that. It's got the control on the front, independent control for each zone. So I'm gonna say right now that this is a very good deal for a refrigerator. If you've been looking at getting into something, but you don't want to spend a ton of money, this is really an affordable refrigerator. This thing is a third of the cost of some of the really high-end refrigerators and half the cost of some of the other like middle grade. And so it's pretty incredible how cheap this thing is. We're gonna have this on some of our adventures. So in some of our upcoming videos this year for 2022, you will see this thing popping up here and there, and I'll be talking more about it. And I'll let you know if it let me down, or I'll let you know if we've had any issues with it. So I just wanted to do some more videos on some budget items because I know not everybody's out there wanting to just spend a ton of money on their vehicle. And like I said, you know, it has its drawbacks, but it's also just super affordable. So I think that this is a good starting point for a lot of people. Not everybody's gonna have the same needs that I have, and so this might fit you really well. Okay guys, so if you have any questions about this refrigerator, drop them below. I'm happy to answer them. And I think that this is an awesome introductory fridge for all you guys building trucks on a budget, or you're just getting into it to get your toes wet. You know, this is a good option to be looking at. I will be doing a comparison to some of the other brands here in the future, just so you know how it stacks up against some of the others. So I'll put affiliate links below for this because they did provide them to me. And if you don't want to buy it or you don't want to use the links, that's fine, but it does help the channel out if you decide to buy one of these. So please click that. And then they also are giving me a coupon code. And so I will put that in the description below as well. So that'll help you guys get a little bit more of a discount. That'll be less than 500 bucks for a refrigerator. And really, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. All right, guys, so that's everything I have on the SetPower refrigerator. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I really do appreciate you watching, and until next time.